Okay, well, it is 7:30 p.m. You know what that means. It is time for the Clear Skies Movement Live. I have got Paul Harris, our guest. You guys will remember him when he and Will were talking about the shapes in the sky. And we got to talking a little about where the money trail is on that. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. But before we do, Miss Dawn is here with me tonight.
Good evening, all.
And of course, Paul, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
See, there we go. And who do we have in the chat tonight?
Oh, we have Christy. And
Hi, Christy.
It's finished. And
Nice to have you.
The Chosen, DPS.
There we go.
98. Everyone's saying good evening to you.
Oh, good evening, everybody. I typed it in, but how are we doing over on, we got anybody typing in on Substack or Kick or YouTube tonight?
They usually, no one types in, but there's a few people on here and there. So
Okay, well,
I'll keep my eye open.
Looks like we're doing pretty darn good then. With that, I think that we will just get right into the show. Paul Harris, you have been trading energy for how long?
Roughly 15 years.
And in that, what have you learned that brings you to us?
So that's a really loaded question there. Basically, we want the synopsis here. Energy is the crux behind the U.S. dollar. We call it the petrodollar for a reason. And the entire world runs around energy, from food to moving your trucks around, the goods, to ships, to getting from point A to point B, whether that's charging your electric vehicle or putting gasoline in your car, diesel fuel for a truck, diesel for a boat, the whole 9 yards there.
Right.
So and when you think about the whole food production, you have the farmer that has to till the fields with the tractor that requires fuel. Then he's got to plant the seeds that requires more fuel with the tractor. Then he's got to have the crops fertilized, which typically is from an airplane, and the fertilization is from natural gas. 90% of fertilizers from natural gas. And then you get your harvest, or if you have to irrigate the fields, now you have to use more power to irrigate the fields. It's just not simply, oh, it rained, or my crops need water, so I need some sort of delivery system for that. Then when you go to harvest the crop, you have to use a tractor to harvest the crop, and then you take it to the food processing plant, which uses natural gas to process and dry out the crop, like corn, wheat, and make it into things that we can eat. And then it takes diesel for a tractor trailer to move it to the store. So, and then not only that, the plastics that we wrap it in too. So everything that we consume from the store pretty much has a tremendous amount of natural gas and oil behind it.
And when we're talking about how that ties in with the trading on, because weather is traded right on the markets, on the Chicago Exchange. And do you trade on the Chicago Exchange, or do you trade stocks like a day trader or something like that?
No, I actually trade NYMEX contracts. So I do ETFs like oil and coal. Coal is 2 times leverage on the short side for natural gas. So if you thought the price of natural gas was going to go down, you would buy shares of KOLD. If you thought it was going to go up, you would buy shares of BOIL, BOIL. And there's other products out there too. Or you could go right to the NYMEX and purchase yourself a micro contract or the big natural gas contract. There's also E-mini contracts too. I normally deal with the ETFs for a longer trade. And then for like a short-term trade, I'll use the micro natural gas contracts.
So what does that mean in terms of geoengineering?
So what happens is weather is the primary. I mean, it is the number one swing demand in the entire world. So when you have extreme weather, whether it's cold or hot over large population centers, this can be Eastern China, Japan, Western Europe, and even in North America. I don't know why I'm hearing myself again. So when you have large extreme demand or extreme heat like that or extreme cold, you create demand and supply irregularities, and that demand and supply balance gets disrupted. And as a result, the price can either skyrocket or it can decrease, depending on if you have a lot of heat during the winter season, or you have a lot of cool, wet weather during the summer. You won't get the cooling demand from natural gas power plants.
Right.
You don't have to run your air conditioner as much.
So would it be safe to say that because weather is the biggest swing, right, the most important component in all of energy trading, that to be able to control the weather, you are controlling whether you see what I did there? Weather, two different kind of weathers, babe.
Oh boy.
Whether you are making money or not, if you are a huge trader like the U.S. government is.
Oh, absolutely. Some of the largest paid meteorologists actually work for commodities firms, and they do energy and commodities from like corn to wheat to soybeans, and then you have natural gas, fuel oil, crude oil. I mean, we don't think too much about that, and it's more of a political standpoint. But weather can have a tremendous effect. A lot of your fuel oils and heating oils come from standard crude oil. Most of those markets in North America are like in Michigan, the Northeast in particular. So when you have Arctic air masses that come down, you get a sudden sharp demand for that oil. And there's only so much inventory at any given time,
Right.
that in order for people not to freeze to death, they're going to pay an arm and a leg to stay alive.
Absolutely.
So if you're able to control that balance through weather modification, you can offset a lot of your food and energy inflation and be able to print more dollars or be able to cover more of your deficit spending.
Exactly. So it makes a lot of sense why President Trump has not signed an EO to stop this, because it is generating a phenomenal, not just the taxpayer money that's coming out to pay for all this stuff, but also in the trading markets. It is, how big would you say that market is? In the hundreds of billions, in the trillions?
The natural gas market can get up in the, like, when the price spikes come and you see natural gas go to like $10. Typically, recently, if you take like an average, it's about $4 per billion cubic feet over the last 25 years. And one of the downfalls is when you get these price spikes in natural gas, food, and I guess as I got reiterated earlier, is so much component of energy, and particularly natural gas. You get these price spikes in food, and it causes revolutions. If you go back to 2008 and 9, when natural gas was $10, you look at the Arab Springs in 2010. I mean, you could see the direct correlation there. A lot of the world's population's on the edge of starvation. So if you have a food supply system that's heavily invested in natural gas and fuel oil, and oil in particular, you suddenly have all these Arctic outbreaks across population centers in the wintertime. You're going to drive that price of natural gas through the roof. And as a result, when the farmers go to plant in the spring, the fertilizer costs are astronomical, because most of the fertilizers are made in February, March, April.
Right.
And the price of natural gas is astronomical. So at the end of the day, your farmer has to pay out of the has to open his wallet, get loans to be able to fertilize the land to make food. And therefore, your base food costs go through the roof. Because if you double the price of natural gas, and it would take like corn, wheat, soybeans, or some other barley, some other staple crops, and more than half of your costs are from natural gas.
Right.
You suddenly double that. That box of Captain Crunch on the shelf goes from $5 to $10. And now all of a sudden, how are you going to put breakfast on the table if you're like, even in the United States, if you're elderly?
Right.
Suddenly, breakfast just became astronomically more expensive. And not only that, when you think about the base crop itself and all the corn, wheat that goes for the cows to make milk, the cows get fed, the chickens, the pigs, all of that just doubles overnight.
Wow.
And it takes forever for those prices to come down. Even if you were able to say you got a hold of the weather pattern, you were able to reduce demand
Yeah.
before speculators to drive that price down, you still have that high price in the food chain, into the whole economic chain, and it's going to take a while for that to come down. So you have all these susceptible populations, whether, like I said, I mean, most of the world, like Africa, Middle East, Arab populations, and even in India. But more importantly, like in the United States and Europe, you have a lot of people on SNAP benefits that are getting $300 a month. So when that cost of Captain Crunch goes from 5 to 10, because you had some astronomically cold winter, you have a lot of hungry people in this country. So you're basically pushing the edge here of some sort of revolution or political change based
Hmm.
on how cold the weather was over the winter time.
Wow.
Shouldn't be eating Captain Crunch anyway.
No, you should not. That's exactly right.
Sorry, had to put my 2 cents in.
So I briefly dipped my toe in. I was hired as the executive vice president in charge of sales and marketing for a small oil company in Addison, Texas. And although I never went to work for them, I ended up becoming a chef. I did learn quite a bit about it, and I did a couple of consulting jobs up in the North Dakota area, the Balkan, that sort of thing. I was told, I discovered that there is more natural gas than we can use in thousands of years. Why aren't we pumping that?
That's a good question. I think from the supply demand perspective, we only have so much storage capacity for working gas in the United States. I believe when you go to trade natural gas, I know most people probably don't trade natural gas,
Hmm.
but it's sold in billions of cubic feet.
Right.
That's how the US market sells it. We only have a capability or capacity to store about 4,400 billion cubic feet. That sounds like a lot of natural gas. But when you look at where we've seen in past winters, where the peak of natural gas was, say at 3,800 billion cubic feet, and we wind up near 600 billion cubic feet, it's a drawdown of 3,200 billion cubic feet during the wintertime. So if you have a cold enough winter, it's conceivable that you start running out of what's called base gas, because the system doesn't operate very efficiently when you get really far down in terms of storage. So the system runs great. If you've got 4,400 billion cubic feet of natural gas in your salt caverns and your underground storage facilities, the system runs great. You can get natural gas anywhere you want to go. But as that system draws down, you have to pump up the pressure within the natural gas pipelines to get it to the power plants, to get it to your residential and industrial areas. And that takes even more energy to be able to do. So it's kind of like a negative feedback loop. And once you get down so far, the system doesn't run. It becomes almost impossible to get natural gas to people.
Right.
And as that happens, supply and demand takes over. I know, like, there's a political sect out there like thinks they just print money and solve all the problems. But when you're dealing with a tangible commodity, if you don't have that commodity, you can't use it.
Right.
So if you don't have natural gas to, process food or heat your home, you don't have it. You can print all the money you want. You just don't have it.
Yeah. So my understanding is part of the big trade deals that the Trump administration is doing right now, liquid natural gas is a big part of it. They want foreign countries buying our oil and especially our natural gas. We have the Nord Stream pipeline, and maybe that was an accident. Who knows how that happened.
Yeah.
But it really did change the direction of Europe in overnight. So how does that tie in with what we're seeing in these markets?
Okay, so with your 37 trillion in debt, and you still have no industrial base left because you've exported it all to Asia.
Yeah.
The only thing you have left is the world starts moving away from the US dollar. And we've seen that with the BRICS.
Right.
We've seen that with the Japanese yen. They're the banks over there are starting to embrace what's called XRP. It's a different
Right.
type of cryptocurrency. So the exiting of the US dollar is a very complicated situation. So it looks like the Japanese are going to try to use XRP to get out of it, because as they try to exit the dollar, it has adverse effects on their currency.
Right.
And we saw the Japanese yen crisis here recently, where it went, I believe it was like 150, and they were having really
Yeah.
problems, some really big problems, and that was from them dumping treasury bonds. And so it's a really complex situation to leave. But in the meantime, Europe is like the grand chess piece for everything. So if you have, Russia leaving, China leaving, the Saudis now selling oil and like yuan, pound sterling, Swiss notes, and rubles, uh, you're losing U.S. dollar demand. So
Right.
in order to hold the reins over Europe, because if you look at what comprises a US dollar index, it's like 58% euro, 12% pounds sterling, and then it's like 14% yuan. I mean, not yuan, but Japanese yen. With the yen going, and now Saudi Arabia leaving, and all the other fringe countries leaving, Europe becomes the big centerpiece. So if you can change the energy dynamics of Europe away from Nord Stream pipeline from Russia into Germany, and even tethered into the UK a bit, and force Europe to take our LNG, liquefied natural gas,
Mm-hmm.
you force Europe to buy dollars. And then we can continue to print and keep the game going. We just saw Trump talk about a $750 billion energy investment
Yeah.
into Europe, or from Europe to us. He's signaling that, hey, I got Europe in my palm of my hand here.
And he does.
And if they can't get the energy, if we're forcing them to buy our energy, we own them, from weather modification to their energy. We
Mm-hmm.
own them. We control Europe, and
That.
we control all the political leadership, because what we can turn around and do is say, okay, we know that you're not buying Russian natural gas anymore, and it's still going to take time to turn that pipeline on. And let's theoretically suppose somebody gets out of line, let's say
Right.
Germany or UK or France. We turn around and say, okay, well, we owned a weather modification project through NATO in the United States. We can do whatever we want. We're going to freeze you to death. And when the natural gas runs out and people freeze in their homes, like the UK has been on their knees a couple of times in the last 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
where they had to shut down like chemical plants, and the chemical plants were giving the natural gas back to the system so that people didn't freeze to death in their homes. So if we turn around and use that as a weapon and say, we don't like what you're doing, we're going to freeze you to death, and there isn't anything you can do about it. What do you think? What do you think Stammer is going to do,
Oh,
or Crohn's going to do, or the guy in Germany is going to do? They're going to knuckle under. They're going to have to play
completely.
ball with us.
So, so when we talk about this, we understand that there are rumors that both the EU and the UK are going to be having rolling blackouts. Rumor has it that we might be facing the same thing here in America because we've become so dependent on windmills and solar farms. But what kind of position does that put, on the EU? Are we going to see the end of the EU?
I don't know, because revolutions are not a dinner party. We're talking here, and this is sort of like a dinner party. We're talking about all
Exactly.
the speculative things that could happen. We can look back when Putin cut off the natural gas to like Romania, Ukraine, 15 years ago, and they were freezing to death.
Yep.
I mean, it was like I guess minus 15, minus 20 C, and they were out at like former coal, because you had a lot of coal and stuff that people used to heat their houses with. They
Mm-hmm.
were scratching for coal because the natural gas had been turned off,
Yeah.
just to keep their families alive and not
Uh,
freeze to death. So, when you're talking about that, and you're talking about, revolutions aren't a dinner party. There's a million ways that could go.
well,
I mean, you could easily say, okay, well, the UK people are freezing to death. They've had enough of, say, the migrants. They've had enough of being told what they can and can't say. And now you have the catalyst that's going to get the other part of that population to say, I need to do something.
right.
And then you would see the change take place, and then the globalists probably thrown out of Europe. But, you know, that would be in the hands of Washington at this point and the political leadership in Washington. And again, that comes back to like, you know, our overview here of being collateral damage. You know, you have a choice to say, is weather modification real, or what the factors are going into this, and say, am I going to be a victim or am I not going to be a victim? Am I going to be aware of what's going on? Or am I just going to believe the rose colored glasses they put on me and say everything's fine, but you're standing in a 3-foot snowstorm and it's 10 degrees outside?
And it's warmer outside than it is in your house.
Right.
Yeah. So it would behoove the United States to keep the weather modification program, to sell the coal fly ash over to Europe, or irradiate the skies, or sell our technology that we do it, or use the ice neutrino project to manipulate the weather to keep the skies essentially covered, just like there. I mean, we've got clouds with a silver cap on the sky again today here in Boise. But in order to drive, now there's no gamble at all. Big business doesn't have to worry about losing money. They just have to worry about, how do we keep the supply going?
Exactly. Some of my non-thesis research here, I just wrapped up my master's degree.
Congratulations.
I did a test. Thank you. I did a correlation between natural gas prices and El Nino and La Nina in the Pacific Ocean. Now, if you don't know what El Nino and La Nina in the Pacific Ocean are, it's the subtropical highs generate the trade winds, and these trade wind strengths determine how much wind blows across the water. And if you have a stronger high pressure, you can push more water to the west towards the Indonesia, Philippines areas, and a result, cold water has to come up from underneath. The process is called upwelling. Right. So if you were able to strengthen those subtropical high pressures, and you know the U.S. owns the Pacific Ocean for all intents and purposes.
Absolutely.
And you're able to strengthen those subtropical high pressures by chemtrailing aloft and absorbing the heat that would normally go into the ocean at a different level of the atmosphere. And you strengthen those subtropical highs, and you can increase the amount of trade winds you have. The correlation states that the colder the sea surface temperature anomaly, so think of what is a La Nina as being colder, and therefore the subtropical highs being stronger, the higher the natural gas price. So if you wanted to cause mischief and you wanted to cause supply disruptions and wanted to cause revolutions, you just go out in the Pacific Ocean, you chemtrail, and then you blur the satellite pictures so that no one can pay attention.
Right.
Figure out, hey, are they trails there? Because people are going to look and say, oh, well, I know that commercial air flights don't fly en masse across the tropical Pacific. So
exactly.
There. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to control the El Nino and La Nina out there directly. So as a force multiplier, if you were able to do that, you could set a whole chain of reactions. You don't have to modify the weather over Idaho or Maryland or central Canada. You just go out in the Pacific Ocean where no one's looking for it. You can blur the satellite images, and ta-da, you get your result by just default.
So it almost looks like this is not an issue that's going to be dealt with legislation. Is it too big to fail, as they say?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate all the efforts, and I gotta commend Marjorie Green Taylor. What a fantastic job, but I don't think she totally understands the gravity of the situation. And it's great, because if you were going to run an operation like this, you can't have 1,000 different independent actors doing 1,000 different independent things with the weather and not expect it to have an effect. You have to have total control and total dictation over what you want to do to be able to control the weather.
Right.
Now, it's great that we're going to eliminate all these people from controlling the weather and basically centralize it to one location, probably black holes somewhere in a black budget, and we don't know about it, or Congress doesn't even know about it. I've heard some of the stories about congressmen have said, okay, I want to see the black budget. Well, they get like 5 minutes to look at it. And
Exactly.
Rushed out of the congressional.
Here, I've got this many pages for you.
So,
It's all in 4-point type.
Yeah.
Do you need an eyeglass? Gee, Watson, I think we need a bigger eyeglass.
so when you get that, you see that we're basically centralizing this back into one pot. Now, we need to keep going because we cannot allow our friends and family members that we care about dearly to be collateral damage.
Mm-hmm.
We can't let them starve and freeze to death. We can't let them be victims like in the flood out in Texas or Chimney Rock in North Carolina. So I know like a lot of people might think, oh, the national security interest here is going to kind of, sit me down and shut me up. Actually, no, you need to be the opposite.
Right.
We got to push this forward because as great as it is on a national security level to have this operation and be saying, oh, well, I can control Europe or I can control uh, who's in charge in the United States, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about 2021, when Biden got into office, we had that polar vortex. That started the entire inflation run in 2021.
Mm.
When you go back and you look,
Right.
that polar vortex was a humongous cost on the US economy. And it started, if you go back and look at the energy crisis, it started with that.
Exactly.
So when you look at Kamala Harris's top economic advisor said it was this, the winter and spring of 2021 that cost her the election. So that polar vortex is what technically put Trump into office.
It really is an incredible thought right there, because money is absolutely everything. And now we're seeing that played out in spades right now. What is going to happen? We talked about the $37 trillion in debt. What's going to happen with that when we start looking at the possibility of America becoming the energy capital of the world again and exporting? Rumor has it that we're talking to China right now about buying our energy.
So we're going to need more LNG at liquefied natural gas terminals.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have to compete with other countries like the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. Some of the process behind the Syrian Israel is that Saudi Arabia and Israel wanted to run a pipeline, and Syria said no.
Mm.
And Saudi Arabia wanted to go into Syria, but instead, that's how we wind up with attachments protecting the oil fields in southern Syria. 10, 15 years ago. They're paid U.S.
Didn't we just bomb them 2 weeks ago also?
Yeah. So the whole idea was to link up to a natural gas field in the Mediterranean off of Israel. And then the Saudis were going to run a pipeline to escape Iran. And then they were going to have a big terminal in Israel. But again, Assad and Syria said no.
Right.
And that was back in like 2010, 2011. And look where we are now. They took care of the problem.
Oh, my God.
You're not going to get in their way.
No. Yeah, I think that energy is the big bad boy on the planet. Weaponry is second, but you don't have weapons if you don't have energy.
Exactly. When we go back to, like, say, the U.S. dollar when Obama took over in 2009, you had Sarkozy over there in France talking about we need to get away from the dollar.
Right.
And it was rumored back then that we were going to have a split in the euro. So you had the Southern European nations, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, Turkey may have been involved. And they have high trade deficits, which doesn't match with the strong budgets of Germany and the UK.
Right.
And also with Russia. So we were looking at a split between Northern and Southern Europe in Europe. So if you go and you look and you see what we did in Libya, it totally makes sense because Southern Europe gets all their oil from Libya. And that's where they process their gasoline and their diesel and everything else. So if the US government, like with, if the Obama administration went in and gutted the leadership in Libya, they had total control over the oil. So now they couldn't split the euro into two categories. We had control over the Southern euro now.
Right.
So when you look and you see what advantage would have happened. So you would have had Russia teaming up with Germany. You'd have had a military complex teaming up with an industrial complex with now the energy and the currency behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have had a new superpower between Germany and Russia. We couldn't
Exactly.
let that. We couldn't let that happen, and we can't let that happen. Germany's a conquered nation, so we've seen this push now with the Ukrainian war, and all these migrants. They're purposely. I don't know if you read Zero Hedge in the last week, but they purposely gutted the industrial base of Germany, and now whereas Germany used to have a problem in terms of a surplus. They have a massive deficit now because they're taking care of all these migrants and all
Right.
this extra military spending. So you basically, with the Ukraine war, you basically ended that German Russian alliance and the potential to replace the US dollar, which has been the entire concept here for the last 15 years is to we went into Iraq and Afghanistan and blew out our budgets and racked up a bunch of debt, and then we had the mortgage bond bonanza back in 2004, 5, and 6, and
Right.
we had to pay for that somehow. And the only way out was to make sure the rest of the nation or the rest of the world didn't stop taking dollars. We were going to have to print our way out. There's no other way out.
Mm-hmm.
So now, as we're getting to 37 trillion, how many more cans can you kick down the road?
Right. Exactly. But
So,
but if you can control, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, if you
oh
can
no, you're fine.
control other currencies, especially young currencies that aren't so haven't proliferated throughout everything else, if you can control that with the weather, are we using weather as warfare now to keep the U.S. dollar in its position around the world?
Absolutely. I mean, we go back to what I was talking about with weather modification, El Nino, La Nina, and you're able to control the natural gas prices. We begin to export more and more oil and natural gas. We now not only do we control the weather, we control the demand side, and now we control the supply side.
Mm-hmm.
We control everything. Washington. So even though we're 37 trillion in debt, and you're wondering how far we can kick that can down the road, we can control that. We control everything.
Yeah.
Full spectrum dominance. I mean, obviously, we're not talking about a hot war. We're talking about a cold war in which average people are collateral damage. Washington
Exactly.
doesn't care. I mean, it's clearly. I mean, take a look at the national security aspect. Do you think
Mm-hmm.
they care? Do you think the likes of Dick Cheney care?
Yeah. No.
Or other neocons like Mark Levin? Do you think they care? Do you think Hunter Biden cares?
No.
No. The only thing they care about is power
Money,
and
power, and
how they're gonna.
control.
Yeah, and then it kind of like makes you wonder. We kind of know here on this platform that chemtrails are real, and we have a sense that it's in the executive branch. We know it's been going on for 20 years, and the big question is, why was Hunter Biden on the board of Burisma?
Right.
The question I have, and this is just my question, I don't know. I'm speculating here, and I'm just asking a question, so I don't know. If the presidential briefings have the weather modification involved for that particular day, and you're Hunter Biden and you're on the board of Burisma and you're funneling those weather modification ops to the heads of Burisma, then that's what again, I don't know.
Mm-mm.
I'm just speculating.
Right.
And that's your job. Burisma is a natural gas company in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
They would have total knowledge ahead of time of the operations that NATO or Washington were planning. So if they were buying that
Oh my God.
information through Hunter Biden, that suddenly makes a tremendous amount of sense as why he was on that board.
Isn't that what Enron got in trouble for? Was essentially using insider trading information, and then they really got in trouble because they bought power from California, marked it up, 2,000% and sold it. I don't know if at 2,000, but marked it up, a lot, and then resold it back to California. But they were doing that on information that they were receiving from their contacts in Washington.
Yeah, I don't remember Exelon too much. Or what was it out there in California?
Yeah,
in 2000, where the people suddenly had $2,000 electric bills.
it was just crazy.
All I remember.
Yep.
Yeah, that's about all I remember from that. I was like 19, 18, just a dumb college student. I was trying to figure out my physics and calculus homework at the time.
This is the thing: is when it's tied to the government, Enron they pay the price, but Burisma
Right.
doesn't because you have political connections. And if Hunter Biden was trading those top secrets for pay, is that a treasonous offense?
I would assume so.
Yeah. I would think so. What are they saying over in the chat, babe?
Oh boy. Yeah, you're asking now.
Yeah, exactly. Don's like just focused in on the conversation there.
I was. Well, first Pat says fantastic guest, Sergei, and
Absolutely.
Sue said earlier that she loves Paul and she wants all the weather stock tips. But some people were saying the black budget must be destroyed. The missing money from the Pentagon, dark winter. And then DPSF 98 said China and Russia said they were going to break some treaties with the U.S. and drill in Antarctica.
So what do you know about that, Paul?
Saw some stuff that was kind of interesting on Instagram Reels. Now, I never really pay attention to real stuff because I feel like it kind of makes you like a goldfish where you're scrolling for the next advertisement. But my wife pointed out to me, she says, have you seen anything on this where these people, these boaters from Australia were trying to make a trip down to Antarctica and they were constantly being blocked no matter where they went by these naval ships.
Right.
And I thought, well, I don't know how much truth is behind that, but if it is, I guess they know where the popular routes would be and where you could get tow ships and whatnot, and for safety reasons. It's not an easy trip to Antarctica. I know a doctor that went down there and they would have problems trying to get in and out, waiting for the ice to thaw to the station.
Yeah.
But it does kind of make you wonder, like, is it real? Are ships really there? And are they really intercepting boaters and saying, hey, this is a new line, you can't cross this? I don't know. I've heard things about it.
We've heard that rumor. Have you heard anything about China or Russia wanting to drill in Antarctica? Because my understanding is Antarctica is off limits to everybody. That is the treaty. The U.S. can't drill, China, Russia can't drill, and if the big three can't, then Uruguay is not going to go down there and drill.
No, they're not. Yeah, that's a good question. I gotta follow up. I gotta find some more information on that. I heard a little bit about it, but I didn't dig too deeply into it. I knew about the Arctic and drilling up in the Arctic.
Right.
Exxon was looking to put platforms in right off of Barrow, Alaska,
right,
that part of the Arctic Ocean. But the problem they have there is the pack ice. If you ever watched,
oh my God,
Deadliest Catch.
Yeah.
Oh man, that pack ice comes through, and them guys, they're not afraid of much, but that does scare the bejesus out of them.
It'll shave steel off. I mean, just like it's toothpicks,
like butter.
Yeah. It is. It's frightening how powerful pack ice is, especially up there. And I love the Deadliest Catch. We should watch that again.
We go through stages where we power watch that all weekend, and
exactly.
Like, I'm done.
It's Mike Rowe's voice.
Yeah.
Really, I think that's half the fun of it. So we've got liquid natural gas. We've got the energy deals. We've got the weather manipulation. What did we find out with all of this? If anything, was there anything in the USAID Doge tranche that was released that we could glean some information on how this market is manipulated, or is the market manipulated?
When it comes to natural gas, when it comes to oil, big money run that market.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking big. So, your average Robin Hood investor it's just going to be a barnacle on a whale. So, unless the SEC investigates and say, is this, is it a collusion? Is it, hedge funds? Is it capital investment fund, venture capitalist funds doing this? If you don't know who your market players are, it's almost impossible to tell. But what I do know is I watch the natural gas market in particular move based on the different weather models that come out throughout the day. I mean, you can go,
Right.
we get 4 weather model updates a day, and you can have massive price swings from 12 o'clock in the afternoon to 7 o'clock at night, and another price swing at 1 in the morning, and then back again at 7 a.m. based on the weather. They all usually have power companies that have to hedge. You have industrial firms that have to hedge, and then you have residential demand from the weather. That's all part of the equation. So it's really hard to see if things are manipulated or not without some government entity having access to see who's holding all the contracts and when they're dumping and when they're selling and why they sold.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to cast a blanket and say I think this is manipulated, but once you get down to why did the natural gas price move 10 cents this morning, it's a tremendous amount of work, at least for me. I mean, I get up at 5. I look at what it did overnight, what Asia's doing, what did the weather models say overnight, what does my weather model say? And then 2 hours into it, I come up with an idea where it might go. And then I got to wait for everybody else to decide if it's going there or not. Because
Mm-hmm.
I might think it's going to, say, up 20 cents today. But if the big money is taking it down 10 cents, I got to wait for them to commit. I'm just a barnacle in a whale. I'm not moving anything. And as a
Right.
meteorologist, I'm not moving anything. So, to say it's manipulated, I don't, it's kind of tough. You really need a lot more information to make that determination.
I just find it peculiar that right before the big summer driving season, we always seem to have the processing plants closed down for maintenance for 3 weeks, 6 weeks, and then we have this huge summer bump going for fuel. We've got any number of supply chain issues that seem to happen almost with regularity every summer when it comes to energy. And then, of course, we have the hot weather that drives that price up. Not saying that it's not manipulated, but it could be.
Yeah, I mean, if I remember, geez, I was a freshman in high school, and I remember when it was a big news story because back in 1996, the gasoline price went from 99 cents to $1.12.
I remember that. Yeah.
And it was a huge news story. And what we come to find out was it was the Clinton administration that had changed the blends of gasoline from wintertime to summertime
Right.
for the Clean Air Act. So what happened was gasoline is more expensive now in the summer because you get more miles per gallon versus the wintertime when you don't. Uh, but then you get cleaner air in the wintertime because you have all kind of inversions and whatnot. So this has been like an ongoing thing now for 25, 30 years. And what
Right.
typically happens is when you have summer slowdowns, you'll see the price of gasoline just drop in October because people didn't travel as much. They didn't go to their summer destinations. You have lower economic activity, and suddenly, we have a surplus of gasoline, but we weren't expecting, and the market acts accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll see the price drop in October, and sometimes that's called, the October surprise. When I think back to like 2006, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's dropping back towards 2 temporarily," and then it took off back towards 5 in 2008.
When did we start seeing these massive fluctuations in the price of especially liquid natural gas? Because it used to be a very consistent market, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was right after Katrina.
Hmm.
Katrina changed everything. We had a lot of offshore oil. Back then, I think it was like we drilled about 5 million barrels a day, and a majority of it, 20 or 30%. It's been 20 years, so forgive me if I'm off by a little bit. I keep thinking of 1 to 2 million barrels a day. So our Gulf of Mexico, or I guess Gulf of America, uh, oil production was roughly 20 to 40% of our total daily production back in 2005, and then a large segment of our natural gas came from the Gulf. So Katrina really caused a lot of supply disruptions in an already tight market from the excessive money printing from the U.S. Mortgage bond bonanza. So that all led to this massive energy demand, along with China was exploding growth. So all of this started, in 2004, 2005. And ever since then, it's been extremely unstable. Now, we've had a couple El Ninos since that have really dragged the price down. Like in 2016, we had a really strong El Nino, and you saw natural gas go under too. But for the most part, we've had pretty expensive natural gas for the last 20 years. And it all goes back to Katrina.
Wow.
Katrina really upset the market. And as a result of Katrina, we opened up this new drilling thing called shale. Most people didn't know what it was. I remember seeing some people's taps up in north central Pennsylvania in 2010. And I went on a date and she's like, I'm going to show you something. So she turns on the faucet, she gets a lighter, and I'm like, what?
Right.
Water on fire? And all of a sudden, kaboom. It came right out of her tap. It just exploded. I was flabbergasted. I was like, I never seen, I'm 28 years old at the time. I'm like, I've never seen anything like that. I've never heard anything like this. And, from the Gulf oil horizon, we found out they weren't casing the wells properly. They were just drilling and didn't really care. Not casing the wells. So the natural gas, when they would do the fracking process, would leak into the aquifer, and then people had to go through their taps and then kaboom.
Oh my goodness. Because we've seen, pictures of that exact thing happening. And now, of course, I don't think, God, I haven't seen a video of that for quite some time. Can we turn our attention to oil for a second? And we're trading it with 64, right around $64 a barrel. It was 60, I think, last week or so. The average gas price based on that should be about 90 cents a gallon. Now, of course, we have taxes and everything, but we've got fuel here in Boise at $3.49 a gallon. It's a little over $5, $5.04 in Washington State. They're up at $6-7 a gallon in California. What is driving that difference in price?
Simply put, it's well, at least for the West Coast, it's regulation. It's the political leaders in charge, and it's just funny to sit there and watch, the typical old standard, or where they peddle these ideas, if you will, to people that don't know anything.
Right.
If a person's on welfare and they have no desire to work, and I'm not criticizing, there could be 1,000 reasons to why you're on welfare, but the general consensus among working people is that, hey, look, if you're on welfare, that means you're lazy. That's not always the case. But when you're on that type of thought process and you've kind of given up, whenever some leader tells you, it sounds like a really simple answer, you're going to go ahead and gravitate to. So you're going to go out and they're going to tell you that, the other side wants to take your money and make you go to work. So you're horrified about that.
Heaven forbid.
When you take a look at some of these ideas of like how I get pregnant as a man, you scratch your head and stuff. How in the world can college kids actually believe this?
Right.
And they have master's degrees. Like, you clearly didn't master thinking.
No, not at all. There's no logic there. No logical thought process at all.
Yeah. So the whole idea is that Democrats are really good. And I used to be a Democrat, really peddling ideas to people with low IQs that sound simple.
Right.
Hey, I just go along with the flow. Everything's racist. Everything is sexist.
Absolutely.
Is, men get pregnant. We need to, my teachers, this educator over here is for hearing voices that your son's really a girl. So we're going to take your kid from you based on the voices in that teacher's head and do a sex change operation. That's totally okay.
Completely.
So they're experts at peddling, very simple, unlogical solutions, and that's how they keep their control. And they're able to push the environmental agenda to make it rough for everybody else trying to work and live by the rules.
That's one of the things that we see in the climate industrial complex. It's all propaganda, and it's designed to scare the rather uninformed masses into agreeing to let them put a project together that costs hundreds of billions of dollars a year because we need to save XYZ, or we need to stop, this ridiculous Republican approach. And it's not, the fact is that many of these things aren't Democrat or Republican. They're things that happen, and many of them actually need to happen for society to run okay. And by shutting it down, they're creating a problem. And then once that problem, it's just like, when people go to the doctor and the doctor says, you have this, rather than cure it, they put you on a medication. The medication gives you a side effect. Then they go in and they treat the side effect with 2 more medications, and then more side effects, and then more medication. Pretty soon, you're nothing but a walking bag of pills. And that's very much what it seems like to me that is going on with the political process here when it comes to driving up the cost of energy and manipulating the weather in order to keep those prices high and aggressive year round, because we wouldn't have the type of trading that we do. You can trade on the weather. That should not be allowed, but it is, and it is a huge market. So all of a sudden, it takes all of the risk out. And when you have people like Hunter Biden then passing that information off to Burisma, and I'm sure that there were people inside Burisma that were, or Burisma, is it Burisma or Burisma? Burisma, that one, the B word over there in Ukraine. I'm sure that they were feeding that information out to people they were paid by. The Chinese, the Russians, the Germans, the Israelis. Everybody trades on it. It's kind of like a shark frenzy, a feeding frenzy there. A big piece of meat with a drop of blood gets in the water. All of a sudden, everybody's taking a bite out of it. And that frenzy drives the market. It's the that one coin. I forget the name of the coin. Anyway, there was a coin that everybody started talking about, Bitcoin. Everybody bought into it. It skyrocketed. The people that started the coin dumped it, made billions, and left everybody else without a penny in their pocket. So that's, it's just, are we seeing much trading? You mentioned XRP in the Chinese, the Chinese are moving towards that, but are we seeing much Bitcoin trading when it comes to the LNG market?
I don't know, and I want to reiterate again, we don't know if Hunter passed along top secret.
No, of course, I'm not saying he did.
Let's not get that target over our head. We're just speculating.
Just exactly.
Chemtrail operation. This is a distinct possibility, and the only way to find out is Attorney General Pam Bondi has to go into it.
Yeah, that'll never happen.
Probably not. But one conversation, you brought up a good point with the climate change stuff. Dane Wigington had a conversation with Al Gore, and this is this is all from memory. Mm-hmm. One of the things Dane Wigington said to Al Gore was, the aircraft contrails, whatever you want to call them, are causing all kind of global warming. Why are you so focused on CO2 rather than the chemtrail or contrails, chemtrails? And his response was CO2 gets the most play.
Exactly.
So I start thinking well, wait a minute. If you're Al Gore and you're running around claiming, your CO2 is going to melt the Arctic ice cap. I went to his speech at UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County in 2007, and I came away scratching my head. And of course, at the time, all the bigwig Democrats were sitting up front. It was like Mikulski,
right?
Senator Ben Cardin. I believe Governor Martin O'Malley was there. And then you had the former president of UMBC. All the big wigs were
right on. All your stalwarts.
And I started thinking, at the time, climate change is nothing but a smokescreen for the weather modification they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of took it a step deeper of, did Al Gore get the nomination to basically make it look like a really close effort to allow the Bush crime syndicate to go ahead and win? Has he been the dupe the entire time for the crime syndicate of the U.S. government?
It sure seems that way.
I'm asking myself these questions because it's every time I turn around, he's talking about CO2. Well, anyone with a solar panel on their roof can see that these chemtrails are not having 0.0 effect. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
long line of meteorologists out there that will argue with me, tooth, nail, and sinker,
Mm.
that I belong in a mental institution. I belong nowhere near weather. And I can go, okay, well, let's go to your viewers. Why don't you go on the air and say, hey, uh, if you have solar panel data from your house, why don't you share it? We'll put it live on the air and
Right.
prove that it has 0.0 effect. And if you can't do that, then you're lying. You're
Mm-hmm.
flat out lying. And that's at the worst side. At the best side, you're just lazy and you don't want to have to do any research to have to expand what your job title is, the meteorologist, and your vital interest to the community. Because clearly, either you don't care or you're being told to lie,
Yeah.
and that's just the fact. So you can have your opinion if blue is really the color blue, but at the end of the day, if I have solid opinion that, hey, we're seeing some sort of disruption at the surface from these chemtrails, and you're claiming it has 0.0, then what are you doing? You're like I said, they might just be part of the crime syndicate, and they're like, well, I can't lose my job. My producer's telling me it's 0.0, so I'm just going to go along with it, because when you start looking at like local news stations, it's a shrinking pile. So you
Right.
have in the meteorological industry, you have all these meteorologists or on-camera meteorologists now playing a game of musical chairs, and anyone that gets out of line slightly, the
Yep.
producers just yank the musical chair from you. You're out of a job. And a lot of these meteorologists, I know one in New York. She's on TV in New York. We're not going to say which one. She starts at like 4 o'clock in the morning and doesn't end her shift till 1 in the morning.
Mm.
I would never want to have to be on TV for 21 hours and
Right.
be
That's
involved in
crazy.
that. Just to have a job to say I forecast weather, like, and maybe she's being like prepped to do some other type of national show. I
Exactly.
think so, but at the end of the day, it's a game of musical chairs, and I'm not calling on famous people here, but do you think like a Jim Cantori or Mike Seidel is going to come out and risk their $1 million contract and
No.
say this is real? I don't.
Never.
I love Jim. I love Jim. I love Mike. I mean, I grew up idolizing them, but I don't think they would ever admit to it.
No.
It's
I
too
mean,
much money in there out of their pocket.
they've got kids in college. They've got vacation homes. They've got investments. I mean, they got to keep that lifestyle going up. They probably have a couple of ex-wives also.
I know Jim has a kid that's disabled, so
Yeah.
I love him. Love
Yeah.
him. Grew up idolizing him, but I just don't think from a professional perspective would risk their career for that. I just don't. I just don't see it.
Well, I mean, we've seen much the same with the COVID shot. We saw people that knew that it wasn't good, but they did not say anything. They still administered it, knowing that it was not. It was on
Safe.
emergency, emergency authorization. There was no vetting of it. The mRNA technology changes the DNA. They were having problems immediately. They didn't have to wait. Immediately, they were having issues with people dropping dead, people being hurt severely with 1 or 2 shots. But they went along to get along because doctors, they have lifestyles. Nurses, they have lifestyles, homes, families. So yeah, I get that. I guess that it really shines the light on the people that are making the major decisions for the networks and how they leverage that power, and that's where the real evil comes in.
Absolutely. I mean, to harp on your topic there, I have a couple of doctor friends, and it was like, well, they believed in the shot because that's what they were being pushed.
Mm-hmm.
They, the literature's good. I'm like, well, they haven't really done any thorough research, especially with pregnant women. And it was like, well, I'm not hanging out with you unless you get both shots. So, peer pressure is, I don't want to lose good friends of mine over some shots. I went ahead and took it, and what a mistake that was. I'd never do that again.
Yeah.
I wound up with COVID 3 times after that, and
Oh.
I got to tell you, my heart hurt worse after that shot than it did for the
Oh
other
my
3
God.
times I had COVID. And COVID was the Omicron was really bad.
Mm-hmm.
That was bad. I mean, I didn't move for God, my whole body hurt worse than the flu.
Yeah, it
I
was.
wish that on anybody.
Yeah, it
Have
was.
you gotten it out of you? Go get chelation therapy and it'll strip
Chelation
it out of
therapy?
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got to take care of you. You're now part of the Clear Skies movement family. So I mean, we
Need you
can't
alive,
we
brother.
can't lose Paul going down with COVID again.
You got 1 minute. Do you want to have a closing?
I absolutely would. Well, Paul, is there anything that you'd like to say to wrap this up? And how can people follow you on on your social media?
Passage to read too.
Oh, and you had a passage to read also.
Yeah, kind of in closing here. My ex name is WX Dude 518, and I guess in closing here, I wanted to hurry up and do this because we only got a minute. Let's see. We kind of had a little bit bigger passage here. Okay, here's a good one. So knowledge is also inherently different from both muscle and money, because as a rule, if I use a gun, you cannot simultaneously use the same gun. If you use $1, I can't use the same dollar at the same time. But by contrast, both of us can use the same knowledge either for or against each other. And that very process may even produce still more knowledge. Unlike bullets and budgets, knowledge itself doesn't get used up.
That's fantastic.
That's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that brings us up to the end of the show. Paul Harris, thank you very much. I feel like I just sat through a master class.
Yeah, gotta have you back.
And we will definitely have you back. For all of us, I am Sergei Brown.
And I'm Dawn.
And you are...
Paul Harris.
There we go. Have a good night. We'll see you